When it comes to emergency heating, there are not many options left but to put on 14 layers of clothing and hope for the best, especially if you live in a region where temperatures can drop below zero. I believe that the buddy heater is an essential element of your preparedness for unforeseen situations. You probably remember the snowstorm in Texas a couple of years ago, as well as the recent snow in Florida and New Orleans, which came as a complete surprise. Therefore, even if you live in areas where cold is rare, you never know when such a device might come in handy. In addition to being a great source of heat, the buddy heater can be used for several other things to transform it from just a good emergency heater into a multifunctional element of your supplies. This is what I want to talk about today. I will describe 6 things that most people are unaware of, but that can greatly improve the use of the buddy heater. In my opinion, the buddy heater is the best choice for emergency preparedness. This is related to its compact size, mobility, fuel storage efficiency, carbon monoxide emission levels, and other safety features. And when you learn a few tricks for using the buddy heater, which I will tell you about, you will understand how good it is. Before getting to the point, I want to quickly mention safety. I don't want anyone to receive the Darwin Award after watching my videos. Therefore, in any situation with an open flame, which often happens in emergencies, caution must be exercised. Whether it's cooking, heating, or lighting, it's important to pay attention to how and where you do it. You need to have fire extinguishers, carbon monoxide detectors, and smoke detectors, and hopefully, you already have all of this. It is much easier to understand how to heat a room in an emergency than to decide what to do if your house burns down completely. Now that we have discussed this, let's look at some ways to use the buddy heater that will make it more useful and safe. The first method is to connect a heater to a 20-pound gas cylinder using a hose. There is one hose that can be used without a fuel filter, F273704, but there are other hoses that require a filter. The buddy heater specifies which hoses are compatible. Personally, I prefer the hose without a filter as it simplifies the process. You shouldn't bring a 20-pound tank inside, and that's exactly what they are designed for. It's not even allowed to bring such a tank into the store. I have heard many times that you shouldn't store your gas cylinder on the grill when you're not using it. For example, I have never done this. My cylinder always sits on the grill, and in my whole life, I have never heard of anyone storing a gas cylinder like that. If you have such experience, leave a comment below. How do you store your gas cylinders? Do you leave them outside by the grill or put them in the shed? At the moment, I do not keep them in the house, but if I suddenly find myself home with frostbitten toes and an emergency arises, I will certainly reconsider my plans. So for now, they remain outside, and I hope they never end up inside. I often use these cylinders in my garage, as I spend a lot of time there. I just place the cylinder by the garage door and connect the heater. I have a 10-foot hose, which provides more flexibility. One can also pass this hose through gaps in windows or doors, so there are several ways to use it, and not all of them are related to emergencies. These cylinders cost about $20 and can be useful in various situations, not just emergencies. Although storing 20-pound cylinders inside the house is prohibited, 1-pound canisters are allowed. This leads me to the next piece of advice. Consider acquiring several fuel tanks. One downside of liquefied gas is that it is ineffective in cold weather. If you store several 1-pound canisters inside, it helps avoid cold problems, instead of keeping a 20-pound canister outside. If you frequently use 1-pound canisters, it's a great way to save and reduce waste. But if you only need a few for emergencies, then the fuel tank and refill kit may not justify their cost. Fuel tanks cost about $18, while disposable canisters are $5. A refill kit costs $30, so for 2 fuel tanks and the kit, you will pay about $66, which is equivalent to 12 or 13 1-pound canisters. Therefore, you need to choose what suits you best. Even if you don't plan to use these canisters often, they can still be a good option for preparation, as you won't have to store 10 or 15 1-pound canisters. You can limit yourself to a few fuel tanks and one on the heater while you use it. The fuel tanks and refueling kit are quite simple to use. Just place the 20-pound cylinder on a table or in the car's bed, as I did in this video, then attach the legs to the cylinder and tighten them carefully, as they may loosen a bit. Then you attach the nozzle. Before this, it is advisable to wear gloves and goggles to avoid contact with propane on the skin or eyes. Then, turn the cylinder upside down and open the valve on the 20-pound cylinder. At this moment, you attach a 1-pound canister to the other end of the refilling kit. First, lower the lever and then open the release valve on the fuel tank. Turn it about a quarter turn counterclockwise and you will hear the gas escaping. This is important because you need liquefied propane, not gas. This process will allow you to release all the gas, and you need to wait about 60 seconds, after which a hissing sound will be heard. This will mean that the cylinder is filled. After that, you can close the release valve and disconnect the cylinder from the filling system. Now let's move on to the next tip. Use brass caps instead of the plastic ones that come with it. Although leaks from such cylinders are rare, brass caps can stop them. Plastic caps do not have a rubber seal inside, so they only protect against dust and dirt. Brass caps provide a reliable airtight seal and protect the threads on the fuel cylinder, eliminating the risk of damage and malfunction. It's not necessary, but in my opinion, it's better to be safe. I am used to using brass caps on all my canisters, whether for fuel or regular ones. They cost about $10 for 6 pieces, so it's quite cheap. There are many different options, and I will leave links to them and everything I talk about in the description below. These covers are useful, especially if you store cylinders indoors. Gas leaks in this case are undesirable. Another point to know about your buddy heater: my portable heater has low and high settings, while larger models have low, medium, and high. However, you don't necessarily have to switch between these modes for the heater to work. It's more like a scale that can be adjusted. You can set it to a level slightly above or below average, depending on your needs. This will help extend the operating time of one of the tanks, as you will be able to adjust the temperature more precisely. If you lack heat, just increase the power, and if the heat is excessive, reduce it slightly, without bringing it to the average. This is useful information that is not always specified, and it's not obvious how it works on buddy heaters, but they actually have a range from low to high, not just 3 modes. Also, many do not know that food can be cooked with a buddy heater. Using the buddy heater, you can not only warm a room, but also cook food, allowing you to combine 2 tasks. One way to do this is to remove the protective grill from the front and place it under the handle of the heater. This will create a base for a small pot. However, I don't really like this method because it is unreliable and exposes the heating element, which can lead to damage or fire. Therefore, I would prefer to leave the grate in place. The best option would be to use paint grids suitable for 5-gallon buckets or paint cans. They can be used to hold a small pot of water, and they are installed in a similar way, but they are much more stable and allow the protective grid on the heater to be maintained. I decided to test how long it would take to boil 3 cups of water. I poured 3 cups into a small pot and noticed that the structure was quite sturdy. I also tried with a larger pot, containing 6 cups of water, weighing about 3 pounds, and that worked fine too. In fact, you can put in more if you want. As for the time, it took about 25 minutes for 3 cups of water, which is, of course, longer than on a regular stove, where it would take about 10 minutes. But since you are using a heater anyway, I don't see it as a problem. As I already said, this allows you to use fuel for 2 tasks at the same time, so you don't waste it. You can cook not only in a pot. I tried cooking an egg, and it turned out great. If you need to reheat food, you can wrap it in foil. I tested several sausages, wrapping them in foil to prevent the juices from leaking. The possibilities here are numerous, and you are limited only by your imagination and the weight of the product. Moreover, if you are not going to cook, the grate can be used as a base for installing fans that will direct heat in the desired direction. This will not increase the temperature in the room, but will allow for even heat distribution before it rises to the ceiling. It will be useful if a few people gather in a small room next to the heater, so everyone can get their share of warmth. The fan can be directed both at the heating element and away, so not everyone sits directly in front of the heater. The room now feels the warmth radiating from the heater. Piezo fans are very convenient as they only use the heat from the heater, no batteries or other energy sources. The more heat, the faster they spin. It is important to remember that the fan must be rated for high temperatures emitted by heaters or even wood stoves and fireplaces. Otherwise, you risk burning it out. You need a fan that can withstand at least 600 degrees Celsius, and that is exactly what I have. My portable buddy heater was tested and heated up to 450 to 500 degrees, which is significantly below the limit for which this fan is rated. Therefore, if you are using a Piezo brand fan, rest assured of its reliability. Some of them can be quite expensive, but such an investment is justified, especially if you have a wood stove or frequently use a heater. If placed in the right spot, it distributes hot air excellently. In preparing for various situations, there are many tips and tricks, some of which really work while others may be a waste of time and effort. However, all the tips I mention are truly useful. You can significantly save on refilling gas cylinders. One gas cylinder can be very useful in emergencies. Although I have other ways of cooking, I am always looking for ways to use fuel as efficiently as possible, as it will run out sooner or later. The longer the use continues, the less fuel remains. Therefore, when there is an opportunity to save, I try to do so. For example, cooking while heating the room. Although all these tips and DIY projects are useful for emergencies, it's best to have the right tools on hand. I recently made a video about essential items for preparation, which are truly the best tools for this task, and I also described the buddy heater in more detail. That's all I have for today. Take care of yourself and be ready for any situation. See you soon.